I start with thanking the Institute for organizing this event. Although they call it the inaugural event formally of the Institute has been involved in Saudi Arabia or in the Arab world quite extensively, at least the past 30 odd years that I've been involved with the Institute activities in the area. So they call it the first, but the first visible, I think. They have done much more work over the past 30 years that I know of. I'd like to thank the foundation as well, because I think the foundation is the one that's doing all the organization. And also I'd like to thank the Financial Academy in the Kingdom, because that is a counterpart that is in the program. Unfortunately, I'm unable to thank the Saudi Actuarial Society. I will come to it in the end of my talk. A small introduction, a background to who I am, so you know which angle I'm coming, so how I'm talking about. So it's not marketing as much as gaining your credentials, because many of you are young. The past yesterday and this morning I'm talking to few of you, and I'm only talking about this person, that person, this person, that person. They are all retired, and some of them have passed away that belong to my age group. So I thought for you, you should realize that I would like to say that I graduated almost 50 years ago in actuarial mathematics. And I've been working for 40 odd years as a consultant. And the past 30 years, I've been heavily involved in actuarial education. So this is the three very important parts of my life. Earlier this morning, one of your colleagues here said, "Oh, I remember you from your bow tie on LinkedIn or pictures." Another person would probably remember me because of my jokes. I tell jokes usually. And if you are ready for a joke right now, I'll tell you a joke, an actuarial joke. But I really would like you, by the time you leave, you remember more than my bow tie or more than my joke. But since I talk about joke, I'll tell you a joke. And since we are in Saudi Arabia, it's a very timely joke. Once a person, before he passed away, he wanted to write his will. And we know in Sharia, you don't have to write your will, but let's assume, actuarially speaking, he had to write his will. And he had 3 boys when he wrote his will. He said, my youngest son should take half of my inheritance, because he's the youngest. My middle son will take 1/4 of my inheritance. And my eldest son will take 1/6. And since all of you are actuaries here, or I hope most of you are actuaries here, you would realize that 1/2, 1/4, and 1/6 do not add to 1. And the father was smart. He said, leave the rest to charity. So by the time this guy died, he had 3 children, but the problem is, he had only 11 camels to his name. So they wanted to execute the will. They brought a lawyer. Any lawyers in the room? Oh, I'm sorry. They said, what to do with that? 11, how do we do? Give them half. I said, I barely know, I'm a lawyer, I barely know how to add and subtract. I don't know how to divide. Get an accountant. So they brought an accountant. Any accountants here? No? Good. So the accountant said, oh, that's very simple. Half 11 is 5.5 camels. You see, I can say jamal. He said, oh, what do you mean? Half, 5.5 camels. You cannot cut the camel in half. He said, I'm an accountant. I go precise. If you want more creative solution, get an actuary. Actuary is supposed to be creative. And this is something you will hear me talk about later on as well. So the actuary said, oh, that's very simple. Fetch me a camel from the neighbors. They brought him a camel. Now we have 12. half is 6. Mr. Young, actually Young son, you take 6 camels. 1/4 of 12 is 3. The middle got 3. 1/6 of 12 is 2. The eldest got 2. So now 2, 3, and 6 is what? 11. We still have 1 camel. Return it to the neighbors. So actuaries are supposed to be creative. And unfortunately, the cohort of our generation, so this is, I'm not insulting anybody under 50 here. I'm much over 50, but much over 70 as well. But the cohort of our generation, we studied actuarial science because we were good in math. And we like to make money. So most actuaries that are my generation are boring actuaries, except me. And we only work for money. This is why the profession became stagnant for many, many generations. Only the young, new generation are different than us. And our hope for the profession is the new generation to really be more creative and not be a typical mathematician in where they like numbers only. IFRS 17 was the curse for the profession, in my opinion, because it is employing actuaries only because they need actuaries, not because actuaries are creative. And the actuarial profession celebrated, now we have more jobs, but more non-creative jobs. So I urge the new generation, don't wait to be employed because the employer needs you, because when he needs you, he thinks of you as a liability, as a tax. He only have to pay salary to comply with the regulator. I would like you to be hired by employers that they appreciate that value added you bring to the company. So this is my pitch of my background. So I would like to share with you today a little bit what I have decided to talk about. What I have spoken now is not what I have decided earlier. Okay. And by the way, the reason I put the Muhanna and Company and the Muhanna Foundation, because Muhanna and Company pays for my living, Muhanna Foundation is my hobby. So this is the education side, is a hobby side, and that is my bread and butter. For you who didn't read the program, when I was asked by Irene or by somebody from the Institute to write something, what I'm going to be talking about, and the slot is talking about actuaries in the Middle East, I thought of something to say like this. Certainly there is a need, and then certainly there is supply. So what's the problem? The problem is by far more than you can imagine. With due respect to all, I'm supposed to be an expatriate, but I'm closer to Saudi Arabia than most other people. As long as the supply are not from within, you will have a problem. And I'll take a small example. A driver of a taxi that leases the car to drive the taxi, he will not run the car into an accident. He will not run intentionally a car into a ditch. But he doesn't care about the car the way the owner of the car cares about the car when he drives the car. The consultant who is an expatriate cares about his job. He does his job, he's a professional, but is unlike a Saudi actuary working in Saudi Arabia. This is something you have to understand. Depends on consultants, but start building up the proper profession. And now I'll talk about the profession in a minute. By the way, since I set the foundation, I'd like to take here between parentheses, there are 2 people I like to mention now. One, God bless his soul, he passed away a couple of years ago, and one is most of us know very well, is Chris Dakin and Curtis Huntington. When I met these two people in 1988, I met two selfless people that care about the profession. And I was young, I was only 34 years old. They were older than me, they were my role model. I started the foundation 4 or 5 years later, and both of them became trustees in the foundation, and until today, Chris is one of our trustees. So I always like to recognize that. Where do I have to point this out? Now we know we are here under the umbrella of the IFoA, but the IFoA was instrumental in the establishing of the IAA that we know today. The IAA that we know today was not the same prior to 1998. In 1998, we were a bunch of individual actuaries. We were about 10,000 of us. I don't know if I have it. Yeah, we were about 100,000 of us. Yeah, we were about 100,000 of us, but we were individual actuaries. So I think this is wrong. We were about 10,000. This is wrong. This is not 96,000. That's not 100,000. That's the wrong. There is a zero in between. We were about 10,000 actuaries in the world, and as individuals coming from 70 different countries. And if you look at the roster, I have it with me. In the roster, you have actuaries coming from Kuwait, where actually right now we don't have an actuarial body in Kuwait. We had actuaries coming from Saudi Arabia. So they were registering into the IAA from the country where they are residing or the country they are working. What brought us together is the actuarial profession, and we met only once every 4 years. Now, also, since you are all actuaries, you may have noticed between 92 to 95 is not 4 years, and between 95 and 98 is not 4 years. But the reason here they had 3 years apart because of certain celebration of 150th anniversary of the Institute of Actuary, so we couldn't have done the Congress differently, and the same thing with the Belge when we were celebrating the 100-year anniversary of the IAA. But by 1998, the IAA became not an organization of actuaries, but rather an organization of organizations. So here I would like to share with you how did the 1998 and I'm very proud to say me as an Arab, I was one of the organizing people that organized the IAA that we know it today. So this is the spread of the organization that signed into the IAA that we know today, which is all associations in the world that existed prior to 1998, and they were accepted into the IAA as either full members or associate members of the IAA. And if you notice, most of the Soviet Union countries at that time, they did not have associations, or they were about to have associations, and this is why you see a lot of gray area at the end, and Africa did not exist completely in the radar, almost completely, with the exception of South Africa. Where do I point? Within 2 years' time, the landscape changed. Many associations applied to become associate members. Many were accepted as full members, and the whole world became more vibrant. And here I would like to mention, the first time I went to Siberia, I was invited again with Chris Dakin. We went to teach actuarial science in Siberia. And when I was telling my daughter I'm going to Siberia, she had, quick, witty girl, I mean, I'm talking about a young girl at that time, said, Dad, nobody goes to Siberia. They are sent to Siberia. I mean, you are going to Siberia. Nobody goes to Siberia. So, and because I was afraid to go to Siberia, I chartered a private jet. And Chris Dakin said, I cannot go on a private jet. I said, I cannot go on a commercial airflow. Just after the default of the Soviet Union. I have a family. So we flew Lufthansa to Moscow, and then we took a private jet to Siberia. And all the Siberian people thought we are so rich because the jet was waiting for us for 3 days to take us back to Moscow. And the whole actuarial profession in Russia kept talking about this Muhanna guy and this Chris Dakin, but they thought the money came from me. You know? Anyway, so if you notice, the whole profession was developing nicely. But what is sad, and this is now up to date, and we as actually we like up to date information. That's there. This is up to date, up to last week. But look how sad if we look this picture and we look at the Arab world. In the Arab world, with the exception of Morocco and Lebanon and Egypt and recently Tunis, there is no actuarial body. There are some actuaries. You have tons of actuaries right now in the kingdom, but there is no actuarial body. And I'm going to come to the problem why when you don't have an actuarial body, what is the problem? So, and of course, you can see also most Africa as well, there is no actuarial bodies, and I'm very active in Africa the past 10 years. And I hope this document already is passed into the IFoA, so you have it. I can save you a lot of work, Katina, in your council meeting discussing the international approach of the IFoA, because you have all the data here. But I went even further to analyze the number of actuaries we have in every continent and as a matter of fact in every country. And to really see, earlier in the session before us, they were talking about penetration, and because they are talking about how much insurance is being sold in any country, part of the GDP. I didn't want to go about the GDP. I said, okay, let me look at something a little bit more we can put our hands on. This population. Let's look at the active population in a country between 21 to 65, and look at the number of actuaries we have, and look at the percentage, not percentage, 1 per mil, how many actuaries in every 1 million of active population in the country. But we all know averages are dangerous. Here I'll tell you another joke. Once a guy was crossing a river, and he was afraid he doesn't know how to swim, and he saw somebody coming from the other side, and he said, I'm 180 centimeters. How deep is the river? The other guy at the end, he said, it's 150. So the guy felt comfortable that he can cross the river. By the time he was 1/3 of the river, he was drowning. He started yelling at the guy. And the other guy said, oh, I forgot to tell you, on the average is 150. So averages are very dangerous. So this is where we go and look at every continent and every country in every continent. For example, in Africa, what brought the averages high is because of South Africa. South Africa has 59 people per 1 million, where most of other Africa is less than 1 person per 1 million. So this is when you dissect. It is very, very important. And of course, later on we have to link it to the insurance industry, the investment industry, and so on and so forth to really see if a particular country, this is America, and again, you can see in America, the United States is very big, and you can see Canada. And here you can see who is exporting actuaries working overseas. By far more than the local needs, and we can see that. Okay, this is Asia, and again, Prior to establishing the Lebanese Association, actually, we were 5 people. Now we have about 50 and only 20, almost 20 qualified actually, but we have 50 between associate and qualified, and we have about 100 students coming on the stream, getting qualified. I will go. I have Asia and New Asia, not because I created a new continent. New Asia for me, the countries that were ex-Soviet Union, and then they became countries. And this is when they are entering, because we will come to Europe now, and I'll talk a lot about Europe and how new Europe is developing, and this is what the lesson I'd like Saudi Arabia to take. Okay. This is Europe, and you can see in Europe the 3-4 countries that have a lot of actuaries per 1 million population is Ireland, Switzerland, and the UK. Ireland is very interesting case. People should really see, and you don't see many Irish actually expatriates. That means they are building a profession internally for internal needs. Or maybe they are working in the UK, I don't know. But you don't see them in many, many Irish actuaries worldwide. But I think this is something should be looked into. Switzerland, you have a lot of actuaries, but on the research side and the academia side, and also in the profession, in the consulting and insurance. Now, New Europe is the case that I wanted to really end my diagnostics. You see in New Europe, Poland, and when the Soviet Union collapsed, there was the first summer school called Actuarial Summer School in Warsaw. And it was, I don't know if it was financed by the institute or supported by the institute. There were professors going from the UK to Warsaw to teach actuarial science. That was the first country in Europe, in East Europe, to develop the actuarial profession. And I would like to show you, I have my bag. And that was in 1993 when they started doing it. In 1994, I said, I want to start our first actuarial summer school in Lebanon. And the first year, we had 4 students. 1 Lebanese, 1 Bahraini, 1 Saudi, and 1 Sudani. Me as a Lebanese, very proud Lebanese, and we think we are very smart, I was sure that at least I will have 1 person from the 4 will pass, which is the Lebanese. I was very comfortable, at least we got a Lebanese into the group. 6 weeks into the program, the Lebanese dropped out. And I was devastated. I mean, I'm stuck with the Saudi, and a Sudani, and a Bahraini. How the hell am I going to teach them? We put all the efforts we can do, and luckily, the Bahraini failed, it's okay. The Saudi passed, and the Sudani was a superstar. And that was our first summer school. And since then, for 10, 12 years, every year, we used to have 10, 15. We always had, in every promotion, we had Saudis. And then, when we realized that we cannot do how much the market needs, we decided to start supporting universities instead of doing the job ourselves. So we started giving tuition material, giving scholarships, giving teachers to universities to teach. In Lebanon we had university, in Jordan we had university, and in Bahrain we started, in Sudan we started, and so on and so forth. So education is what brings me to what's the future of the profession is, into investing into education. So let's see the way forward. Until today, if somebody wants to simplify actuaries in the world, they say there are either qualified, sorry, I don't wear hats often, so it's too hot. Either a person studies at university or what we call self-study. Self-study. What the Institute does, or the society in America does, that's self-study. But they give exams and they qualify. So there are two ways of qualification. Most people look at the exam-based, what they call exam-based. I don't like the word exam-based because as if the university don't have exams. Both are exam-based, but I call self-study or university study, formal education or informal education. The issue is, with the profession exam is predominantly Anglo-Saxon profession, method, system. American, British, South Australian, South African, primarily Anglo-Saxon. Continental Europe or South America, they don't have that system. They have really a hybrid. They started initially only university. Then when they started with actuarial profession, with societies, not everybody who graduates could be automatically admitted. It's exactly when somebody studies medicine in a university, become a doctor, then he wants to join the medical profession, he has to pass the bar. So there are many professions in the world that they don't accept automatically university graduation into membership into a profession. And most of these membership into these professions are really, they are, I don't want to say the word union, may I speak Arabic, هون نقابي. يعني ما في الواحد يمارس العمل بدون التحاقه بهالنقابة. You cannot practice your profession unless you join that association. Engineering, for example, medicine, lawyers, you have to pass a bar exam to practice, other than the university. And that with due respect to whether you are a graduate from Harvard or whether you graduate from a small technical college. If you pass the bar, then you become a member of that society. This is where the concept, you have university degrees, you have professions, and you have the hybrid. The reason the hybrid is important, because the universities are not sufficient. Universities are really not in the business. The profession is closer to the business. They know what the business wants. They are serving the business. Although we know that universities are supposed to bring cohort of graduates to serve the employer. So this is where we say that, technically speaking, the hybrid issue is very important. Now, let's zoom in to universities. Unfortunately, most actuarial programs in universities are housed in the math department. It is under the chairmanship of the math department. And that, in my opinion, is a flaw, because it's labeling actuaries as mathematicians. I believe we are beyond mathematics. We are by far more than mathematics. We are, I think the world is not enough for me. What's mathematics? Mathematics is a tool. I use Excel. I put formulas. There are many universities, they have their actuarial program under the business school or under the econ school. And the graduates from these cohorts are brilliant actuaries. They are studying actuarial science, but they have other components. They are interacting with students that are different breed than them. When they are in the math school, they are geeks. They are only mathematics. This is very important. I remember when I did my Master of Actuarial Science, I took 2 law courses. It's fascinating to study law. Because by the end of the day, all the products we design them within rules and regulations of policy. We have to understand, appreciate the policy, the wording of the policy. Every clause has a price, or every clause can give a discount. So this is something very important where I will urge universities that have actuarial program to go into really looking into beyond mathematics. And I'm very happy to say that in the syllabus of the IA, the minimum syllabus requirement of actuarial education, we put communication. Most actuaries don't know how to communicate. And the easy way out, saying, oh, it's very difficult, this report is an actuarial report. You board don't understand. We understand. We are the actuaries. You are idiots. This is not because it's so difficult to understand, because we don't know how to communicate. Communication is the issue, and this became a requirement in actuarial education. So I noticed, I spoke to few of you, we are timid. I don't know, you have to really, and I'm not talking about students, I'm talking about some actuaries that are in their 30s and 40s. We have to change our concept of our profession. Our profession, we are the enemies of the profession. And the last but not least, when I work, they use the word enemies. Unfortunately, not everybody. Actuaries that took 10, 15 years to qualify, once they qualify, they don't want anybody else to qualify. They don't want the easy way out to other people, because they want to make the money themselves. So it has to be from the institution side to simplify the damn exams and to really see how can we have more actuaries. Not every actuary has to really be able to answer all his exams, all the exam in the 3-hour period. I read English slower than I read, slower than most of you probably. How do you expect me to pass the exams? English is not my mother tongue. So we have to really, the institute have, and this is, I'm speaking from two, a president-elect and president-elect. You have to either give more time for non-speaking English people or make different exams for Arabs or Greeks, or Greeks they don't teach you anyway, but for third world countries. So at this note, I would like to thank you very much, and I hope by the end of today, you don't only remember my bow tie or my jokes. I hope you take away what I just said. Thank you very much.